Shri Sudhir Pratap Singh Ji, IPS DG NSG, Major General Bipin Bakshi, VSM IG NICT, esteemed guests, dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries and guests from foreign nations, delegates from security establishments, officers of the NSG, my friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, allow me to congratulate you for this brand new auditorium in the memory of a warrior, Lieutenant Colonel Niranjan, in his memory, so that people that come here, events that happen here, are always bestowed with the sense of camaraderie, leadership, and sacrifice to keep this elite NSG always at the top, the way you've always been performing. We have martyrs from the NSG, Major Sandeep Unikrishnan and Havaldar Gajendra Singh Bisht. I believe there have been about 19 people, soldiers from NSG who've been martyred in the course of operations that NSG has conducted. Today's topic, I think, is something that the whole country has been plagued with, terrorism, and I think in a manner the whole world. Our Prime Minister has been speaking at all occasions and functions to bring home the point that there is no good terrorist or bad terrorist, and this is a curse of the 21st century, and we all have to live by it, and you find ways to move ahead and keep the nation and the people safe. I remember the way we've been trained. I've spent a lot of years in the army, and as a soldier, one is willing to face a lot of challenges. The worst one is to die at the hands of a faceless, a nameless person, and that's the improvised explosive devices. A lot of our resources are spent in trying to counter, trying to find out, trying to keep the roads open, trying to keep the airports safe, trying to keep the men safe from all these improvised explosive devices. Now, as the name suggests, the improvised explosive devices are the most easiest to put together. They're very cheap. The components used can be brought off the shelf. There's technology available on the internet on how to make them. And it seems that the people collaborate probably even better than some of the security forces to try and put together these sort of bombs and inflict injuries on the people. I remember when we were operating in Kashmir, the boundaries of the security forces, the limitations that we were operating in, kept us limited, but they were taken advantage of by the terrorists as much as possible. Perhaps these people knew more about our limitations and our boundaries than we ourselves, and they used it to their advantage, jumping from one border to the next, between the formations, between the battalions, and they do it between the nations as well. We get limited in terms of trying to coordinate with the other formations to carry out our exercises or to carry out the operations, but it doesn't limit the terrorists, and they use it to their advantage. The borders are porous by far. These terrorist organizations are interconnected. They have a system of finance which doesn't respect borders or currencies. And today, with the communications and the transit that is available, terrorism has become truly global. Like the footprints of our broadcasting signals of the television, the footprints of the terrorism doesn't restrict itself to any border. Just 2 days ago, there was an article in the New York Times by one of the experts, Rukmini Kalimachi, who writes on Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and she wrote about how these lone wolf attacks are not really lone wolf. There's a whole lot of coordination that happens. And she wrote about a person from Hyderabad who received messages from Syria to go to a coastal town in Maharashtra to collect the weapons and ammunition. Now, such large coordinations happening across many continents can only happen once they are very well organized. And this organization allows them to, and especially when we live in isolated segments, it allows the terrorists to have the element of surprise on us. When our soldiers are carrying out exercises or operations, they need to be aware as to what they are looking for. The only fear is a fear of the unknown. And if you know what you're looking for, then the soldiers who are operating are more confident of neutralizing or identifying such explosive devices. When the terrorists collaborate, they collaborate in terms of logistics, planning, their ability to merge with the people, the communication abilities, the knowledge sharing, and of course the propaganda. Now, there have been many instances, both within our country and internationally, where we've been able to share a lot of information and knowledge, and which has actually led to actionable work as well. There are many examples of terrorists who have been identified using social media across the countries, have been followed by multiple agencies across the globe, and we've been able to identify and neutralize them before they've been able to carry out any damage to the people. I think this sort of seminar, and it's compliments to Mr. Sudhir here, who's been able to bring together various experts, and over the next 2 or 3 days that this seminar is, you'll be able to actually, with your experience, put together information that could be used both by the agencies to further develop their intelligence and working capacities, and also by people, soldiers who are operating and can use this bit of knowledge for their betterment. It needs both intelligence, technology, and strategy to be put together. Especially in terms of collaboration on intelligence, there's both data aggregation that's required, which is at the level when an ID blast or a bomb blast takes place, what sort of components were used, what sort of tactics was used, what sort of chemicals was used, and to use that knowledge and put it all together, send it to a data center, segregate the data there, analyze the data, and then this data needs to be available to all the agencies that are working both in the country and outside the country. When we are able to do that, most of the techniques that are being used in planting of IDs, in manufacturing of IDs, or in the tactics used to plant these IDs, would have been used somewhere or the other in the world. And therefore, wherever we are operating, would be better aware of what sorts of threat to expect. And therefore, they are better prepared. Similarly, in terms of collaboration on strategy, I am told that NSG is already training with some of the other special forces of the world. It's also required that targets are monitored jointly by the multiple agencies working across the globe. What it'll do is it'll reduce the stress on any single agency to try and ascertain the movement of the targets. And therefore, sharing of this knowledge will become easier and will make it easier for multiple agencies to be able to track the targets with least amount of effort. There's also a requirement of streamlining international laws. The mechanisms to counter the threat of IEDs is to help in establishing standard operating procedures, both learning from within our organizations and some of the organizations outside. There's also a requirement of collaboration of technology. There's a very important need for bringing in the private sector as well. Now, of late, we've seen that most of these terrorists have actually been identified via the social media. And therefore, these companies that work in social media need to be collaborated with as well. Chemical manufacturers, forensic laboratories, academia, researchers, robotic manufacturers who can develop newer technologies where men are not used directly and you can use the machines to do the work. All these technical data needs to be shared with each other so that the countries can come up with better technology to work with the IEDs. General Bipin Chandra spoke about the financing part of and somehow stopping the finances to the terrorists. Now that's an extremely important step to reduce the effectiveness of terrorism worldwide. We've seen that when the 9/11 attack happened, and after that, the number of attacks in the US is reduced. It's primarily because they were able to restrict the usage of free money. Now, these require very bold decisions. And in our country itself, the Prime Minister has taken a decision to reduce the amount of cash which is available in the whole country. You'd be surprised to know that 86% of high denomination notes was in was in cash, 500 and 1,000 rupee notes. 86% of the economy was just cash in our country. All the developed nations and other countries of the world, usually you have a ratio about 40 to 60, where about 40% is cash and about 60% is online transactions. But not so with the Indian context. And cash comes with its vices. And cash is anonymous. And therefore, sucking out this entire cash, reducing it, knowing the origins of where the cash is coming from and where it is going, it's going to have a positive impact on overall reduction of terrorism in our country. Immediate effects have been felt, of course, in the reduction of throwing of stones in Kashmir to some of the Maoist activities. But these are short-term gains right now. I'm sure we will soon see long-term effects. And one of the important things is to keep a track and reduce the flow of cash currencies in the Indian economy, both in terms of modernizing the forces, in terms of gaining intelligence, in terms of operations. The Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Defense is leaving no stone unturned to move as fast as possible, keeping pace with some of the other countries of the world. Even so, in defense, in the last 10 years, that there was no modern equipment purchased. In the last 2 years itself, there have been more than about 1,00,000 crore expenditures done in defense to procure some of the modern machines to be used, weaponry to be used. There is the explosives and other components, training of IDs, which are provided on a common platform all across the globe. And therefore, sharing of the information post-blast investigations will avoid such incidents from happening, but also save lives of our experts who diffuse them. I'm sure with one of the magazines that we are about to unveil, which is called Bombshell, It'll have the requisite information all put together for people who want to pursue knowledge on this in this field and sector. For a soldier to be more effective, it's just not physical training, but also knowledge of what he's doing. Like I said right in the beginning, one of the biggest fear for a soldier is that of the unknown. And therefore, with all of you experts coming together here and deliberating for the next 2 or 3 days, I'm sure there'll be a lot of information that will be generated, which will help the soldiers to know what they're looking for. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.